Chris here, and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about the books I read between October 19th and October 25th. First up, Bay of Sighs by Nora Roberts, and I gave this book 3 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt, play your TBR right, for Phase 10 chooses my TBR, and TBR vet for Magical Hopathon. So this is book 2 in the Guardians trilogy, and in this trilogy, we're following 6 people who each have their own unique abilities, and they have been brought together to protect jewels known as stars from falling into the wrong hands. This is a fantasy romance series, and this book was just all right for me. It's not the first time I've tried to read it. I had gotten partway through it and then set it down and never came back to it. This was the book I didn't want to read for Play Your TBR8, so I wasn't exactly jazzed about reading it. I don't think I'm as into the fantasy romance genre as I used to be, because I remember a time when I would get Nora Roberts trilogies and devour them. So either this one just isn't clicking for me, or it's just not a genre that I really love anymore, but it was alright, and I do plan to complete the trilogy at some point. Next up, I read Under the Whispering Door for TJ Klune, and this is a 5-star prediction. So my 5-star prediction wrap-up is already up on my channel, as I'm way behind on filming these recent reads, as is evidenced by the fact that this is a recent reads from October, and we're now in January. But I'm going to link my 5-star prediction wrap-up video down below if you want to know my thoughts on it, because that's where I go in depth about how I felt about this book. But basically, we're following a man named Wallace who has died, and a Reaper shows up and takes him to this tea house where he meets Hugo, who is a ferryman who helps souls go from our world into the afterlife. Wallace isn't quite ready to leave and is coming to terms with his death and realizing that maybe he didn't lead the life he wished he had. And then Hugo's boss shows up and basically tells him he has a week to get his affairs in order and cross over, or Hugo's boss will essentially make him. So Wallace, Hugo, and everybody at the tea shop set out to cram as much life into that last week as they possibly can. So again, if you want my thoughts on that, my 5-star prediction 3 wrap-up video will be linked in the description below. Next up, I read The Last Shadow Warrior by Sebidi, and I gave this book 4 stars. In this book, we're following Abby, who is descended from a long line of warriors known as the Asgard. She has been training her entire life to fight the Grendels, and the Grendels are kind of their mortal enemies, and that is the training you do, and she's kind of following in the same footsteps as her mom did before her mom died. Unfortunately, no one has seen a Grendel in centuries, so the Asgard Council wants to disband the Asgard. Then her father is attacked and injured, and she gets sent to a school in Minnesota where she'll be safe. She soon learns that a Grendel is following her, but the Viking Council accuses her of making things up just like her mother did before she died. To protect her father, she must uncover the truth of what is going on, even while someone at the school is working against her. So I really enjoyed this book. I liked getting to see a bit of Norse mythology, as I've learned bits and pieces about that over the years, but it was interesting to see how it was incorporated in this book. I liked getting to see Abby kind of discover the truth of what was going on and how she struggled with all of that because her father was also injured, and her father really is all she has left now that her mother is dead, and she was worried about him while also trying to get to the bottom of things and keep herself safe. Of course, at the same time, she's going to a new school and is dealing with all of the things that come along with being in a new school, around new people that she doesn't know. And at the end of the day, it's not like she can go home and talk to her father about it because her father is in the hospital due to the injuries. This was a very intriguing book, and I do think it is the first in a series, and I have every intention of continuing on with the series. I really like books that include mythology, and this was one of the first I think I've read that had Norse mythology in play. Next up, I read Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, and I gave this book 4.25 stars. So this book follows a group of like 8 people who are in an apartment viewing, and a would-be bank robber shows up and kind of takes them hostage, and while they're stuck in this apartment, they all start to open up to each other and start revealing secrets. And I don't really want to say anything more because saying anything more gives a lot away about the bigger picture. I thought this was a really interesting book. There was a lot of really, really funny moments. I found myself laughing at some of the things that were going on in this book because we get to see things from, I believe, everybody's point of view. I believe all the people who are at the apartment viewing, I believe we get the bank robber, and I think we even get the point of view of at least one of the cops who is trying to negotiate this hostage situation. And it was a really interesting way to write a kind of bank robbery gone wrong / hostage situation. I really enjoy the way Frederick Bachman writes his characters because I find myself getting very attached to them, because this isn't the first book I've read by him, and I like the bonds he manages to show forming between these people who are in this stressful situation. I really, really enjoyed this book and could potentially see myself rereading it in the future. Next up, I read The Firefly Code by Megan Fraser Blakemore, and I gave this book 3.25 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt sci-fi for Phase 10 chooses my TBR, and was my Buzz Wordathon pick for the month, which I believe was elemental word in the title, and obviously the word fire would count. So in this book, we're following Maury, and she and her friends live in this really safe community, and have really never questioned their idyllic life until a new girl moves to town, and her presence begins to make them start questioning things. So this is a rare sci-fi that I didn't love, but I also didn't hate. So we're following Maury, and we're getting to see her relationship with this new girl, Alana. And she kind of has her own little friendship group, and it is interesting to see how Alana slots into this friendship group because she definitely creates ripples. And so there's a lot of focus on the shifts in relationship in this friendship group and how Alana kind of disturbs kind of routine that this group has found itself in. And Alana's presence begins to raise questions as they start to realize there are things in their lives that don't quite add up. And I wasn't super invested in this book because there is a sequel and I have no intention of reading the sequel. But I also don't feel like this book was necessarily a waste of time. It was one of those where I'm kind of like, yes, I know there's more to the story, but I don't know that I would want to read the sequel. So, I don't know. I feel like it's a never say never because there could be a reason for me to want to read a sequel. But at the moment, I don't think I'm going to read the sequel. This book was all right. And again, not a waste of time, but not one that's super memorable. Next up, I read The Road Trip by Beth OLeary, and this was another 5-star prediction. Again, my 5-star prediction 3 wrap-up will be linked below. In this book, we're following exes Dylan and Addie, who are separately on their way to the wedding of a mutual friend when they get into a car accident and one of their cars is no longer functional. And so they end up having to carpool to the wedding together, and it brings up a lot of unresolved conflict between the two. And we get to see how things play out in this like 8-hour ride to the wedding. If you want my thoughts on that, check out my 5-star prediction wrap-up. Next up, I read Telling Tales by Sophie Ryan, and I gave this book 4 stars. This is the 4th book in the Second Chance series, and in this series, we're following Sarah, who has a cat named Elvis and owns like a secondhand shop. And we kind of get to see her solve mysteries because she is drawn into mysteries. Like with most cozy mysteries, that's usually what happens. In this book, we see Sarah's employee Rose delivering a purchase when she sees the buyer being murdered by his wife before she is knocked unconscious. When she comes to and tells her story, the police don't believe her, especially considering they can find no trace of the body. And the wife is claiming that the husband is alive and well and has a text that shows he left her for somebody else and cleaned out their bank account. Sarah feels like something isn't quite adding up and believes that Rose saw something. So she and her cat Elvis start to look into things to get to the bottom of what happened so they can bring Rose some peace of mind. I really enjoyed this book. I liked getting to see this particular mystery play out because you know Rose saw something. And you know what it is Rose thinks she saw, but you don't know if what she thinks she saw is actually what happened. So it was interesting to see Sarah have that same mindset of she believes Rose saw something, but she doesn't necessarily believe that Rose saw what she thinks she saw. And so she wants to get to the bottom of what Rose actually saw and what actually happened. And I thought that that was an interesting way to have this mystery play out because it's a little different than the typical murder mystery. I really like this group of individuals, like the cast of characters in this series, and how they all factor into Sarah's figuring out this mystery. And of course, I love Elvis and his quirky little ability that helps Sarah with her sleuthing. This is a cozy mystery series that I really enjoy, and I definitely plan to continue. And lastly, I read A Tale of Sorcery by Chris Colfer, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. So this is the 3rd book in Chris Colfer's A Tale of Magic series. In this series, we're following a girl named Bristol, who in the first book is living in the Southern Kingdom, and it is legal for girls to read, but Bristol loves to read. So she gets a job at the library cleaning, but while she's there, she manages to sneak around and read books under everybody's noses. Soon after working there, she comes across a book about magic and discovers that she is able to do magic. Her kingdom, though, has banned magic because they're terrified of it. And unfortunately for Bristol, she is soon caught and convicted. Before she can be sent away, though, she is rescued by Madame Weatherby, who whisks her away to the Academy of Magic and teaches her how to be a fairy. Madame Weatherby is soon called away, and when she doesn't return, it is up to Bristol and her new friends to uncover where she went and what happened to her. Obviously, I can't tell you what goes on in this book because it would be spoilers for book 1 and 2, but we're still following Bristol and her journey. I really enjoyed this book. I like that we got to learn more about characters that we had met in the previous 2 books, and we're continuing to grow and explore this world. I also love these editions because when you take the dust jacket off, the naked hardcover is just absolutely stunning. And so they're some of the most beautiful books that I own. I really like getting to explore Bristol's world and the magic here and how magic can be both good and bad depending on whose hands it's in. I just really love the characters in this world, and I don't know if there's going to be more books in this series because, as far as I know, Chris hasn't announced anything, and I think might not even be sure if there's going to be more books in the series, but if there is, whether it's in this series or in this world, because this is also set in the same world as his A Tale of Magic series, I will be reading it because I love this world that Chris Colfer has built, and I love his writing. So these are some of the books I read between October 19th and October 25th. All of my social media is linked in the description below, including my Discord if you'd like to come chat with me about any of these books. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me a door emoji, like this video, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!